What's up guys, Callum here, and today in this video I'm going to share with you guys the top 11 books that I read in 2018, the top 11 new books. And I did a similar video last year for 2017. I think that this will be an interesting year because I read fewer books this year because I really put a lot of focus and emphasis into rereading some of the best books that I've ever come across. And I made another video on this, but I think it's interesting because if you really analyze all the books you've ever read, you can probably take 20% of those books and easily say that they have given you 80% of the results that you've gotten out of reading. And so I think that we can be focused on, getting our numbers up or reading more books, but I think it's important to go back to those 20% of books that have given you so much benefit and to reread those. So in 2018, I read 33 new books. Normally I read around 50, 45, 52, around that area, so usually about a book a week. This year was a little bit less, but I read some really cool books. I think this video will be pretty cool because it'll give you guys a lot of good ideas for new books that you can read. I'll go through each one. It's kind of in order of importance. That's kind of how I structured it. And I'm gonna have all the links below where you can check out these books. So I hope you enjoy. So I'll start things off. Number one is Barons of the Sea by Stephen Ujifusa. And this is a super cool book. It's a historical book, and it's basically about, it's set in the 1800s. It's a nonfiction book, and it's set around the American clipper ships. So it's basically set around entrepreneurs who would build these super fast sailing vessels to get from the United States to China and back in as short of amount of time as possible. And so what these guys were doing is they were basically picking up opium in Turkey and in India and selling opium to the Chinese, and then taking tea from China and bringing it back to the United States. And then it also covered them once the California gold rush had hit. It covered them going from New York or the East Coast and going down the Cape of South America, all the way around to San Francisco, which was like a really crazy voyage to sell all of these goods to the Californians who did not have that many luxury items because they didn't have the transcontinental railroad set up, and it was difficult to get things from one side of the country to the other. So this book was super fascinating. It wasn't like a standard biography where it follows just one person because it covered many different people, but one of the main characters it followed was Warren Delano, and he was, I think, like a grandfather, or he had some kind of relation to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he made all of his money basically in the opium trade, which I knew very little about. I didn't know anything about the opium wars and all the opium that was sold to China. So it was a really cool book. And the reason why I love history, why I love biographies, is because it's just a really fascinating way to learn about the world that we came from, and to learn about the 1800s, to learn about how everything is set up, how life works. And when you read it by a great author like this, I think this is like one of the best books I've read in a long time. It really just brings everything to life. So highly recommend this book, 10 out of 10. So number two is The Food Explorer by Daniel Stone. And this book is about David Fairchild. And you guys may have visited, there's a Fairchild Gardens, Botanical Gardens in Miami. There's probably other ones as well. So I was super blown away by this book. I studied horticulture actually in college. I love plants, and this is basically about a food explorer in the 1800s. He was one of the first official food explorers, where he was basically obsessed with plants from a very young age. Ended up going to work for the United States government, but they were not even interested in foreign plants at that time. So he had to get funding from a millionaire that he met on a shipping voyage. And this millionaire basically partnered with him, and they traveled all over the world to all these extremely exotic places that very few Westerners had been to. This was back in the 1800s when it was really difficult to get to these places like Java and all these places in East Asia. And so David Fairchild basically traveled for years finding the best plants for edible consumption and other factors, agriculture, and would take seeds, clippings from these plants in all these foreign countries, bring them back to the United States, and would introduce them to farmers in the United States. And the reason why it's really important is because if you think about North America, it really had been cultivated for a far less time than the rest of the world. So the Chinese, the Japanese, they had been cultivating and producing plants for thousands of years. And in the United States, it was very much, I guess, natural. Like there wasn't a lot of cultivation of beneficial plants for consumption or for agriculture, or for manufacturing or anything like that. And so what he did was he basically was able to introduce all these amazing plants to farmers, which was very helpful to them. And then the United States ended up growing their agriculture program to have more food explorers traveling the world and finding these incredible plants. So many items that you love and know today, this guy actually discovered in foreign countries and brought them back to the United States so that we could grow them here. So I think this is a really cool, adventurous book. It's going to give you a huge appreciation for travel, a huge appreciation for how easy it is to travel today, for adventure, for seeing the world, and for plants and fruits and vegetables. So 10 out of 10 book, super recommend it. Number 3 is Snowball by Alice Schroeder. And this is a biography of Warren Buffett. And so I actually read the other biography. There's a really good biography by Roger Lowenstein about Warren Buffett. It's called like The American Capitalist or something. And I read that one twice, and that's a great book. It goes really into his business side of things, his investments. And this book covered a lot of his personal life as well. It probably went into his personal life too much, to be honest. But Warren Buffett, if you've never read about this guy, he's like the greatest investor of all time. He's one of the richest men of all time. And on top of that, he's a very good person. And so for me, I love finding people who are rich and successful and who are like hyper rich, but at the end of the day, who do not really care about the money, but are doing it because they love the business that they're in. They love what they're doing. They're not consumed by material items. They don't own 50 houses. They live very simply and humbly, and they give large amounts back to charity. And Warren Buffett is giving 99% of his money when he dies to charity, to the Bill Gates Foundation. Bill Gates is another incredible billionaire who clearly is of a higher nature and is interested in giving back in a massive way. So if you're interested in learning about how to invest for the long term, how to buy and hold companies, how to have incredible morals, how to be very calm and relaxed in difficult situations, I highly recommend reading Snowball. It's very long. I might recommend the audio version so you can just kind of chug through it, but it is a 10 out of 10 book, honestly, as well. So number 4 is The Healing Power of Essential Oils by Eric Zielinski. And I first read this book on audiobook, and I actually went up and bought the physical book as well because I really wanted to go back to and refer to it. Now, essential oils I've made a couple videos on them before. Essential oils are incredible because you're basically distilling the beautiful medicinal nature of plants, botanicals, flowers, herbs, and getting it into this very potent format, which you can diffuse into the air to clean the air, to disinfect the air, to enter your lungs, to have all these amazing medicinal effects, to put them on your skin. Essential oils can do wonderful things. And if you were like me, I knew about essential oils. I had been using them for a while, but I wasn't using them topically until I read this book. And so he is a medical doctor. But on top of that, he's not just so focused on science that he can't see the bigger picture. So to me, he's like the epitome of a medical doctor who also has intuitive knowledge. He also has a wife who's very interested in this kind of stuff, so they partner together to make all these amazing recipes and to experiment with essential oils. And he really just kind of nails it. I mean, this book is amazing. So if you're interested in essential oils, or if you're interested in learning more about essential oils and applying them topically, putting them on your skin, diffusing them, using them for your children, for your pets, this book is incredible. So I definitely recommend picking up this book. It's the best book I've ever seen on essential oils, and I've read a couple. All right, so number 5 is Andrew Carnegie by David Nasaw. So this is another billionaire. Actually, I think he was worth like 300 something million when he died, but today he would be worth many billions of dollars because of inflation. But he's another person where, I mean, this book is amazing. Again, it's super long, but he basically, came up from scratch, built this incredible steel fortune, was one of the greatest industrialists of all time, and on top of that, he was more materialistic than Warren Buffett, but on top of that, he was a good person. And he really pioneered the philanthropist. Because back then, people tended to hoard resources and tended to kind of separate themselves from the masses in any way that they could. And that was kind of the name of the game on planet Earth for the longest time, and it still kind of is. But because of people like Andrew Carnegie, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, there's now this new evolution of millionaires and billionaires who realize that their fortune doesn't necessarily belong to them, that they're going to die, that they're going to leave this earth, and that the way that they were able to make this money, how they use their intelligence to make so much money, they can also use their intelligence to give away their money in a very productive way. So he wrote a really cool pamphlet that I read when I was younger called The Gospel of Wealth, which basically goes into this concept that, you shouldn't be, if you earn millions of dollars in your lifetime, if you're fortunate enough to do that, then you should not be passing that down to your children for generation. You should give that back to society. And I think that's a really cool viewpoint, especially coming from someone who is so hyper rich. And he basically created the library system in the United States, as he saw that as one of the best ways for people to educate themselves, to rise themselves out of poverty and into a better situation. So we have him to thank for so many of the amazing amenities that we have from the libraries in our country today. So another 10 out of 10 book, highly recommend Andrew Carnegie by David Nassau. So number 6 is Leonardo Da Vinci by Walter Isaacson, so another biography. So you're kind of noticing a trend here. So Walter Isaacson is one of the best biography writers of all time. He's amazing. This book came out either in 2017 or 2018. It's quite new, and it's quite famous as well. It blew up. A lot of people have read this. Leonardo da Vinci, I probably don't have to do much of an introduction. Everyone knows who he is, what he's done. What I learned from reading this book is I didn't realize how much he had done with the human body, with dissecting, with all of his drawings, with creating thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of genius. So Walter did a great job with this book. I think at the end of the day, if you read this, you will come out of it a better person. You'll come out of it more curious, more intellectual, more worldly than before you read it. So you can't really go wrong. Another 10 out of 10 book, Leonardo da Vinci by Walter Isaacson. So number 7 is going to be Personal Success by Brian Tracy. So I've mentioned Brian Tracy in some of my other videos regarding books. I've read probably 25 Brian Tracy books, and I've reread those books many, many, many times. So this is one book of his that I hadn't read before that I just read. And it's basically a very short summary. It's a very tiny book, and it's a short summary on personal success. But I thought it would be a cool book to point out in this video, because I think I listened to it on audio. It was maybe 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and I listened to it about 6 times this year. And if you haven't read any of Brian Tracy's books before, to me, undoubtedly, I've seen a lot of personal development, I've seen a lot of success people. Undoubtedly, Brian Tracy is by far the best person I've ever seen teach personal development, personal success, time management, sales, organization, creativity, all these things. He is incredible teacher, very successful himself, very good at teaching. So if you pick up this book, it's very short, and I guarantee that you're gonna have incredible results. Brian Tracy's a legend, so check this book out. All right, so number 8 is gonna be Principles by Ray Dalio. So this was another book that it either came out in 2017 or 2018, but it's another book that became very famous. So Ray Dalio is another person where he is multi-billionaire. He's alive today. He runs one of the most successful hedge funds of all time, and he lives in Connecticut. And this guy, I didn't know much about him before reading this book. I listened to some interviews with him. I read this book. He's a good person. He's giving away, he's pledged at least 50% of his wealth to give away to charity. So he's another one of those philanthropists, another one of those billionaires who clearly is not consumed by the wealth and clearly is interested in mankind. So in this book, Ray Dalio basically distilled his best principles for life and work into this book. And it's very long, it's very complicated, it's very high level. And for me, I was able to take away a lot from this, and it was amazing. And I think that it almost felt like it was written sort of for a young person when they're starting off, but actually more so, the majority of the book is written for like a CEO of like a major company, or someone who's like managing or running like lots of people. Like it encompasses basically the entire spectrum of someone starting off in life, making, the appropriate decisions for their life, but also someone who is very, very high level in their career, and it covers just about everything in between. So this book, it can be really complicated. It can feel kind of overwhelming. I think that for me, this is something that I read that I got a lot of value out of, but I know that in 10 years or something, I'm gonna go back to it and get even more value out of it, because so many of the principles in there were for someone who is managing large groups of people or for kind of running a high-level organization, which does not apply to me, or maybe it does not apply to you at this time. However, there's a lot of principles in there that were really amazing to get started. One thing that I thought was really cool is that he is very into personality testing, understanding how his brain works, how his employees and colleagues' brain works, so that they can properly communicate, and making sure that the person is working a job that is within their highest skill set, so that they're using the best of their creative faculties to do the job, rather than having them in something that doesn't quite align with what they're meant to be doing. And right now, I'm in the midst of kind of figuring out what I want to do career-wise, and it made me really interested in doing assessment tests, personality tests, and understanding kind of how my brain works, what kind of work I'm actually suited to. And so because of this book, I went forth and completed a number of workbooks trying to figure a lot of that kind of stuff out. So I was really thankful for that. So another 10 out of 10 book, Principles by Ray Dalio. All right, so number 9 is The Essential Lewis and Clark. So I'll link this one below. This is basically a collection of their letters that they wrote while they were basically crossing the United States. So everyone's heard of Lewis and Clark, but I don't think many people have actually read their personal letters. And this book was really cool because it was very distilled. It was literally only their personal letters, and then very, very few commentary before kind of each section of letters, just kind of saying where they were at in the journey and what was going on. And they were, I mean, honestly, from reading this book, the takeaway that I got was that these were two good guys. Like, these guys were on point. They were incredible writers. The word that I would use to distill this book would be beautiful. Beautiful. And the reason why I say beautiful is because they wrote in such a poetic manner. They wrote about such simple, beautiful things. Like, they were out in nature. They mostly wrote about animals, so the animals that they came across, the country and the land that they saw, and then the Native Americans that they interacted with. And so for me, that was really cool because I have not read much about Native Americans in their natural habitat. So basically before humans, or before the Westerners came in and kind of infiltrated the nature and their situation, kind of reading about how they lived, how their tribes worked, how they interacted. And so in this book, they go into a lot of their really raw, natural interactions with the Native Americans, smoking with them, having counsel with them, and trading with them, working with them, hunting animals, exploring nature, all written in this very beautiful, simple manner. And you can really just come away from it knowing that these are two super good guys of a super high nature. So I was very pleased with this book, highly recommend it. All right, so number 10 is gonna be Your Brain on Porn by Gary Wilson. So this book is really cool. If you have ever seen pornography, which I would venture to say that probably everyone watching this video has at least been exposed to it once, I would recommend reading this book. And so basically this is a scientific book that goes over a lot of the latest research on neuroscience and different academic studies that are being conducted related to pornography. And what I was able to take away from this book was not only the bad effects of pornography, but also it really helped solidify some of the thinking that I've had on the internet, social media in general, just because a lot of it is related. So just how pornography switches between large amounts of people in a very short amount of time in a very stimulating manner. The same thing applies for social media, the same thing applies for YouTube, the same thing applies for the internet news. So for me, this really helped distill a lot of thinking that I've had done on this, and it really helped me kind of recenter myself back to a way of simplistic living, using the internet appropriately, but not overusing the internet. And I'm gonna be coming out with a video on the internet soon that's gonna kind of go into this new way of thinking that I've had about it recently. So number 11 is gonna be Millionaire Teacher by Andrew Hallam. So this book was cool. I'll throw this in here because it wasn't, for me, it wasn't a game changer. I read a lot of financial books in the past, but I will say that this is a really cool book for anyone that is interested in investing that maybe feels a little bit overwhelmed by it. So Andrew Hallam is a millionaire teacher. So he's young too. I mean, I think he's in his like late 30s. I think he became a millionaire maybe in his early 30s. And he did so by working low wage teaching jobs, or medium wage, whatever you want to call it, but teachers don't make a ton of money, and he basically did it by the books. So he's very frugal, he saves a high percentage of his income, and he invests it in passive index funds. And so over the course of 10 or 15 years of him working, he became a millionaire. He's financially free. To the best of my knowledge, he still teaches. So he's from Canada, so he taught in Canada. He also taught abroad as well. And he distills this in his personal story, but also teaches you very simply how to save money and how to invest in index funds for the long term. So I thought this was done very excellently. So if you're new to investing, if you're kind of confused about retirement, if you're confused about money, if you want to save more money, but it feels like you don't earn enough money, I recommend reading this book. I think that you'll get a lot out of it. And so guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. All the links for all these books are in the description below, so go check them out. Please comment below if you read any of these books or if you're curious about any of these books. Comment in the comments below. I'll check those out, I'll respond to those. And if you're new to the channel, definitely hit the subscribe button. Like I said, in 2 weeks, I'm gonna be coming out with a video probably on the internet. There's a lot of other cool content coming in the future, so hit the subscribe button and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Ciao.